Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to another great week of the Snap No Tap podcast. We got Joe Cardinal here. We haven't heard from Nico. He's busy working weekends, so it's very difficult until the weather really becomes mucky, bad weather, and then he won't be working, I guess, and he'll be back. But we have a very special guest today. Now, as many of you know, week after week after week, we get inundated with all these beautiful female actresses and models that follow this podcast just to get a glimpse of Joe. Well, I've been getting hundreds of emails from male stars like Brad Pitt and Robert De Niro and Al Pacino. They want to see women. So today we have one of the nicest women I've ever met, beautiful lady inside and out, and she's our special guest. Her name is Melody Jeter, no relation to Derek. And I'm going to let Joe take it from here and introduce her formally.
Sure. Well, we're super excited to have Melody here. For one thing, just to get kind of the female perspective on training, and also just something that, you've started training, I think, a lot later than a lot of people that we've had. Like the past couple guests, like Josh and Jason, they grew up grappling. So they grew up, they're on the mats probably as far back as they can remember, especially Josh. He said basically growing up, he was always on the mats. And, but I know there's a big segment of population out there, like myself included, basically, who didn't do that, and then we come at it from a different perspective, and it is a different path up the mountain. And it can be kind of intimidating when you come up, when you're training with those people who have started, who've been training since they were, growing up in school and stuff. And so it's, it's their bread and butter, but it's always exciting to talk to people who have, decided, hey, they're already, going through life and they're like, let me start it up now, So I definitely want to hear how that happened. A lot of interesting perspectives from Melody. She is a purple belt in Carlson Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, which is impressive. That takes some commitment, that means you're in it for, several years and working hard. So that's no fly by night. And I've been her student. I've been at Jason's gym when she's taught. And so, she's now giving back to the grappling community, which is awesome. But before we get into Melody's story, we've got to do our plugs, obviously, of course. If you're looking for authentic catch wrestling training from the man, Tony Cecchine, the best way to do that right now, while it's available, is the Tri-C program that gives you immediate access to all his videos. And what you also get is the opportunity to come out and train at his home gym, which you're looking at now in the video. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can train there and stay. And then what's awesome about that is, obviously you get the opportunity to hang out after training and get all the backstories of how all this stuff came about, which is just a treasure. And then, of course, you have video learning options where Tony can customize videos and send them to you, which he's doing with his current Tri-C students. So really, it's the best bang for your buck as far as, you can buy all these things individually. You can buy individual training opportunities. You can buy videos individually. But if you're going to do that, why not just put it all together at that big discount? And then you're kind of locked in for life of having this, opportunity where you don't have to pay again. You're just coming out when your schedule avails itself. You can come out and train. So that's awesome. Like I said, all those things you can buy in individual pieces on Tony's website. But if you're, obviously the holidays are coming up, if money's an itch situation, obviously we all went through COVID. The least we ask you do is if you're enjoying these podcasts or Tony's videos on YouTube and all the free content we provide, it's free to you, but it costs us to produce. So please consider joining our monthly membership program. It's a really just, a drop in the bucket from anybody's budget, but it really is appreciated and helpful for us. There's 2 levels. $5, which is just kind of a thank you to us and kind of giving us a nod that you appreciate what we do. And then there's a $10 a month level where we actually do monthly produce unique videos that we release to you. They're not customized to whoever has that membership. They're, a monthly thing, but that's just added bonus. So that's our stuff. Then I guess I'll drop it to you. Hey, Melody. So where do you train out of? Where is your gym? Why don't we plug that first?
We'll start with Bender Martial Arts and Fitness. It's in Ravenwood. And Jason Bender's a black belt owner, instructor there, and has been my instructor since the very beginning in my jiu-jitsu career. And it's a fantastic place. It's nice. It's new. So it doesn't have that funky gym smell just yet, but give it some time. It's a great group of people, probably 70 or more so students who train Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and fitness. He also has just general fitness classes. And we have judo. I keep forgetting about the judo. Sensei Stan teaches judo there on Tuesdays and Thursday nights. So it's a well-rounded program. You can get a lot in, and full of really fantastic students. And Jason himself is, if anyone knows him, knows that he's sort of the Pied Piper of teaching people who don't know or don't seem like the most obvious martial artists how to be martial artists. So if you've ever considered doing it and thought, I'm too old, I'm too out of shape, I'm not the right person, Jason is literally somehow designed mentally to get you there. He can make it happen. So that's my pitch on Jason's gym. I think it's a fantastic place to train. We have some elite athletes, honestly. We have some folks who are monsters on the mat, but sweethearts inside. We have a lot of folks who are just regular people who are fascinated by martial arts, interested in the community, interested in training, interested in self-defense, interested in martial arts, and everyone is welcome. So come down and join us. I teach on Friday nights.
And I'll second that. I'd say, a lot of people, coming in blind to a gym can be intimidating because obviously, there's a range of schools out there and a range of attitudes. And obviously, full contact gyms can be very testosterone-y and scary for people, but it's a very welcoming environment. I can say firsthand, everybody's friendly. And obviously Jason, that comes from the top down, obviously the way he starts it. So definitely encouraging if you're thinking about it, but are like hesitant for whatever reasons, you couldn't start at a better place.
We've had Jason. We've had Jason on before, and he's just a great guy. He's one of my students, and I haven't been to his new gym. I thought it was still in Andersonville, but you say it's Ravenswood, so I did not know that.
It's Andersonville. It's on Ravenswood.
Oh, okay. I got you. So it is still Andersonville.
It's still in Andersonville. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a nice area. It was actually before I ever, not met Jason, but before I ever went to his gym, which has now been 3 or 4 years, probably 4 years ago, maybe longer. I'd only been to the Andersonville area, I think once or twice in all the years that I've been in Chicago. It's funny because big cities, people generally, now this is generalization, but they tend to stay in their own little neighborhoods. It's rare that they go out unless it's for business or medical or something. So I was totally unfamiliar with Andersonville. It's nice.
Yeah. It's a great little neighborhood, and actually very recently, I think, named by somebody, I don't know who, some magazine, the second most exciting or interesting neighborhood in the world.
Really?
Yes, I think the one who won was the neighborhood that won was somewhere in Europe somewhere. It's a fantastic, exciting little Chicago neighborhood. As you guys know, Chicago's full of those neighborhoods.
Yeah.
But it's, so the gym is right there in Andersonville. It's easy to get to. There's parking. Sometimes the things that prevent you from getting to the gym are the simple things. Sometimes it's, can I find a parking space easily? Sometimes it's, is it close enough to where I work or where I live? So if you're in the area, you should definitely check it out. And I think also that the intimidation factor, especially around martial arts, I remember when I was much younger, I was fascinated by martial arts. Loved Bruce Lee, loved the movies, but it just, the look of the martial artist, this would be in the late 70s and early 80s, that these are men and they are fit beyond belief. And within that image, there wasn't room for women, much less older women. Of course, at the time I was a young person, I was, I guess, I don't know, I was cute is really what it was. But I wasn't an athlete. I've never been an athlete. I played a little tennis, I swam, I did a little of this, a little of that, but I've never been that athlete. And a lot of people who come to martial arts, I think later in life, have been athletes of different sports in their lives, and they're looking to try something new. We get a lot of folks like that, which is fun and kind of hilarious because they come in both usually with a great athletic, open mindset. They're very coachable, which is great. But they also, I think, feel like their advantages because they've been a runner or they've been a tennis player or they've been whatever it is, and they come in and they discover that fighting is a completely different way of moving your body and a completely different way of expending energy. And I had a rugby player in class recently who was very gung-ho and very excited to get started and very quickly gassed. And we were just doing, drills, but it's, generally speaking, it's very unusual behavior. It's unusual movements. Fighting is like, where else in sport do you do many of the same movements that we do in grappling, especially, I think, striking as well, but mostly grappling. There's just some weird stuff we do. So people come in and I don't know that they are, as past athletes come in and I think are surprised. And then folks like me who've never been an athlete, who somehow, I swear, Jason tricked me into doing jiu-jitsu. That's what happened. He tricked me. Because I never wanted to do it. I didn't know about it. Then when I found out about it, I'm like, that's a lot of touching. That's a lot of, that's a lot of work. It looks hard. I don't want to do that. And then we got into a fight over silliness, over the gym we had been at was shutting down and we had to move gyms, and I was not happy about that. Had nothing to do with Jason. I was just cranky, and I was upset that the new gym didn't have any mats because I had been training Muay Thai with him and really enjoying that. And I was upset about that. And he said, well, you don't need mats for Muay Thai. And I had no response to that. I had no answer to that. So my stupid brain said, well, what if I wanted to do jujitsu? Haha. I thought I had him there. I was wrong. He jumped on that like I don't know, like a dog on a bone. He's like, you want to do jujitsu? I'm like, well, maybe, but now I can't. And 6 years later, here I am. It's pretty much the only thing I do these days. So that's how it all started. It was me going, I don't really want to.
Well, where did you meet Jason? And how did he get in your life to begin with?
So back in 2014 or so, I was very much out of shape. And I'd been struggling with some hip issues and had, through a combination of things, diet changes as well as physical therapy, have finally got into a place where I was just simply able to walk around without being in a lot of pain. And I knew that the trick to staying healthy was going to be to start working out, really. So I checked in with my physical therapist at the time, and just asked her, like, I need a personal trainer, because the one nice thing about being older, I think, is that you kind of know yourself at this point. And I know I'm lazy, and I know I don't like to exercise, and I know that I need somebody to be on my butt. So I asked her for a recommendation for a personal trainer, and she recommended Jason. And so when I very first talked to him, I explained to him that I had one major overarching goal, and that was to, if I was lucky enough to make it to 80, And I fell down, which most people do when they're old. There's a lot of falls as an older person, that I would survive that fall. That was my goal. And it's interesting because one of the first things that he said to me was, oh, well, let me teach you how to fall. So this is before jiu-jitsu, before any of that. And it never occurred to me that there was a way to fall. And after having taught me how to do that, that was such an eye-opener for me. It's like, why are we not teaching this to everyone? This is like a day, like just an everyday skill that everyone should know. But I started working with Jason only as a personal training, client. I was just trying to get strong and healthy. He came out of the back of the gym one day early on with a pair of gloves and said, here, put these on. I'm like, okay. So I put on gloves and he starts teaching me Muay Thai, which is hilarious. Okay. You have to understand, look at me. This is funny. 1, 2, let's see. We were starting with very basic combos and I kept falling down. Because, and this is quintessential Jason. I kept falling down and he kept saying, that's fantastic. It means you're pivoting. And I'm like, okay, whatever, guy. Anyway, I eventually learned not to fall down. And I started, so we were lifting weights and we were doing Muay Thai. Really, it's just a fantastic cardio. And for someone like me who can't abide long distance work, the running, the swimming, the cycling, it's all good. If you do it, you should keep doing it. But I'm 3 minutes in and I'm ready to just kill myself. Like I can't get my brain to do. So doing these kinds of sort of almost sprint type workouts, when you're doing striking of any kind, you're in there 3 minutes and you're resting a little bit and you're in there again, but you're working really hard when you're doing it. Worked well for me because I never had the opportunity to get bored, I guess. I always like to say exercise is hard, it hurts, and it's boring. And what Jason taught me through martial arts is that, yeah, it's hard and it hurts, or it can, but it's not boring. And that's the thing that kept me focused and kept me going. So that's where we started. And then I didn't start training jiu-jitsu for another year, about a year, because like I said, I was very reluctant. But when I came to him, I had been to Thailand before I met Jason, because as you guys know, I grew up overseas. I grew up in Southeast Asia. So I'd been to Thailand, but I'd never heard of Muay Thai. I'm not a fighter, I've been around the world. I'd never heard of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. UFC 1, I don't know. So I learned all of that about that from Jason in that first year when we were just talking at the gym. He's trying to get me to lift more weights.
Well, Jason is very easy going in a lot of ways. You don't know Bruce Lee, my Bruce Lee,
Right.
but there's similarities, not in their knowledge base, because my Bruce was, just all in wrestler all the way, college level and all of that. But their personalities and they're more easygoing, low key. Whereas the guys like me, I'm high strung. Most of the guys that I know, one guy that I want to have on the show, Terry Dow. He's Bill Wallace's number one. He's going to inherit the system. Terry is also very low key. He's on my Catch a Kickboxing series. He's another guy that's a very great striking instructor and everything, low key. And that's kind of cool with Jason, because you could be stressed and Jason will kind of, bring you down, which is, in a good way, he'll mellow you out, which is nice.
Yeah, it's been interesting because I've been with him long enough that I've actually seen him change the way he instructs. Uh-huh. I've seen his jiu-jitsu change. When I met Jason, he was a purple belt. I didn't know that at the time because I didn't know what that meant, but that's when I knew him first. And I've watched him grow his business and grow his gym and his student body and he's still on that journey trying to figure out the things that works best for him. He's very interesting because you're right. He's pretty good. he can come in and push and ratchet up the energy when you need it. And then, yeah, he can back off and listen and figure out what the next steps are. And that's so important, again, as an older athlete, I use the term loosely. You have to have somebody you got to work with, because since I started jujitsu, especially, I feel like I'm injured every other week. And that is something that as a older athlete, you have to really consider, especially I think in grappling. They just fold you up into little tight ball of a human being, and you're gonna get something tweaked. And I think Jason's really good about managing those kinds of energy levels across your entire jiu-jitsu journey. The idea here is to be able to train as much as you can, but still be able to walk away with few injuries. But it's going to likely happen. And the older you are, the more likely it's going to happen, because you come to the sport with a body that's sort of busted up over time, and you just exacerbate things. So, but yeah, and the injury thing is something that everyone has to consider. Because as a young person, if you get an injury, if you if you tweak something in your elbow, for instance, 4 to 6 weeks. If you're older, 6 to 8 minimum for you to heal up from that. It's just the way it is. And you always make sure you have plenty of ibuprofen around.
Yeah.
But it also then begins to, you have to highlight things like mobility training and strength training. And this is everything that Jason has taught me. It's like, you can be a successful grappler at this stage of life if you maintain your strength and you maintain your fitness and you push yourself in those areas. If you are consistent with your mobility and your prehab and you clean up your diet, you can absolutely do this. You don't have to be a super athlete. You just are seeking to be a healthy person. And it's absolutely something you can do. And then the payoff is you get to, go hang out with crazy people who like to choke each other and, try and break each other's arms. It's a lot of fun. Now, how did you meet Tony? How did you meet Jason?
Oh, I met Jason initially maybe 20 years ago or something like that.
Wow.
He was like a beginner. He was just may not have been that long, but it was around that time through Javier.
Yeah, I know Javi.
Another world champion. Yeah, so I met Jason and some other kid that none of us can remember who he was, honestly. And then so that's initially how I met Jason. Yeah. And Jason did his thing with the jiu-jitsu. I was teaching probably at Triton College, and then I moved my gym to Bensonville. You just don't cross paths.
Right.
That's another thing about Chicago. It's very tribal, and I don't mean like jiu-jitsu or karate schools, but it's so neighborhood based. Like if the school isn't in the neighborhood, nobody wants to go there. It's rare. So that's exactly how I met Jason. Long time ago. Yeah, and he knows Costa, who's one of my best friends, and they're like really tight.
Yep.
So it's just all through the grapevine kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And, but he's a good guy. But now you hit on something with everything you hit was a home run there, which you said. But diet, injuries. So many people try to want to sweep that under the rug, and it's bound to happen. Especially if your intensity level is higher. But the diet really makes a big difference. You have to try to eat properly, and that doesn't mean become super strict, but just monitor. You can have your really good. I'm the type of guy with my diet, I'll eat anything I want to eat, and then I'll go on more strict diets, like for 5 days or 7 days or whatever, maybe 3 times a week, 3 times a year. That's all. Just keep everything in line. That's how I manage it. Other people want to be strict all the way through. I enjoy food too much, but I just watch my weight pretty much, and that's it.
Yeah, focus on trying to make sure whatever I'm eating is nutritionally valuable, right?
Yeah.
So it's fine to have ice cream or whatever, but if you're not eating your greens, you're cheating yourself, you know? It's and that's, you know, I live alone. On the one hand, that means I don't have others. I have to negotiate, you know, around what their diet choices are. But on the other hand, it means I can absolutely end up with a kitchen of rice crackers and peanut butter for 3 weeks and go, oh, good Lord. Okay. And order out too much of stuff because I get lazy. But that's always my checklist, is like, did I have enough protein? Did I have something green? Because I love food. I love it. But yeah, I think it's incredibly important to give your body the best chance to do this stuff. And you do that by eating as much of the good stuff as you can, you know, that and sleep, especially again, as you get older. Oh my God. And that can absolutely be a struggle. I know this isn't anything you guys will necessarily understand or have experience with, but there's a point at which, as a woman, you hit a particular age and your sleep is disrupted because you're having hot flashes all the time. And you're just constantly dealing with that while you're dealing with changing from your perimenopause stage into your menopause stage. And it's just like kind of a crapshoot. And you have to be careful, because we talk about training tired when we're training fighting, because the worst thing, of course, in a fight is to be tired. So one of the things that you can do to sort of prep yourself for that is to train tired. But there's also this thin line between training tired and being smart about it, and being overtired and setting yourself up for injury and setting yourself up for problems. And again, as you get older, those margins are just slimmer and slimmer and slimmer. So I think you just have to be smarter about when you're doing your training. And, you know, I'll go, and that's the nice thing again, like, so I train with Jason 5 days a week. And I train one-on-ones with him. And that's another thing that's valuable as a older student, I think, is that I can go in and say to Jason, you know, I've been working like a crazy person. I haven't been getting great sleep. And he and I can still get in a good hour's worth of work. We can work on technique. We can do all kinds of things. I can go in as I have this injury. He's got an elbow injury right now. We can almost always work around it, especially with grappling. You can find something that you can work on that day to make you just a little bit better. It's a little harder to do that when you're walking into a class, because the class is not going to be you know, tailored to just one person. It has to be available to all of the people who show up. But I still think grappling, any of the grappling kinds of arts, I think it's easier to continue to train through things, whether that's you're tired, whether that's you're injured. But there's still a point at which you need to step off the mats and rest and heal up. There's always, and figuring that out is a tricky thing, because who amongst us doesn't want to train anyway? That's how I get myself in trouble. Like, I have injuries right now, and they would have been healed up certainly weeks ago if I had just stopped training. That's a hard thing. It's a hard thing to do when you dive into this, because it's so much fun. But I did think, yeah, those are all important.
I can totally relate to the sleep, because for years and years now, I get 4 to 5 hours of sleep. That's it. And if there's one thing that I wish I could do, and it's out of my control, we've tried everything. It's just not going to happen for me. I wish I could get 7 or 8 hours of sleep. I don't. So for me, it affects, you know, mentally more than anything. And of course, with all the stress I'm under, like for example, yesterday I just hit the wall. I was so tired. In the afternoon, I just wanted to lay down. And I can't. Every 10 minutes, you know, my mother doesn't know who I am anymore, so she keeps coming up to the, is anybody here? Who's here? I'm alone. So, you know, for me, my body is adapted, and that's not good. I don't care what anybody says. I don't want my body to adapt to this.
Right.
I wish I could get more sleep, but I just. But the thing is, you have to be alert. Otherwise, you don't really pay attention and things go in one ear and out the other with the training. I've noticed this with people through the years when I coach, that they might not be sleepy, but their mind is not on it. Like maybe they have a personal problem, of some sort, romantically, financially, who knows? And I try to pull them off to the side. Hey, what's up? Maybe you better sit this out and just focus on listening to what I have to say, as opposed to, going through this half-ass, or go home. And I don't mean it in a bad way, but it's just like, you really got to absorb what's going on. And we've all been there. You have, Joe has, everybody's been there, where you're physically there, but mentally you're not. So it's important but you hit on something earlier when you said you have fun. So you look forward to it, which is good. A lot of people, like when I first started training, I think in the beginning, I look forward to it. But after like the first week, I'm like, man, I don't want this shit. This was too rough, but I was forced in essence to go, pretty much. And then later on, I started to begrudgingly accept it and like it, I guess. I mean, maybe it never was fun for me. I'll tell you that right now. 5 years of like a boot camp every single day.
Oh, God.
But no, you get through it. But then I had aspirations of staying alive or just becoming, the toughest man in the world. So I had that goal. So I'm like, yeah, this is good. That brings me to a big thing that I want to discuss, because talking about putting time in and becoming excellent at something, you're the first person. We have something in common here. And you're the first guest that I have had on that is a serious musician. Okay. And music is, I always I relate all of my fighting to my musical training. My fighting pretty much predated my musical training. Let's talk about your music background. And if there's any way, I know you're classical, I was more of a jazz guy, but if there's any way that you relate that you take what you learned in music to help make you a better athlete.
So, yes, I started piano, when I was little, 4, 5, like little. And then my parents were always of the opinion that you needed a music education of some kind, that the way to begin was on the piano, because if you could learn the piano, you could learn anything. That was their thinking. I don't know why. Neither of my parents were musicians, but that was their thinking. So my brothers and I all started very young. I stuck with it till my early teens. And yeah, mostly classical music. And then over the years, through various things, travel and being in locations where I didn't have access to a piano. So one problem with piano, it's not very portable. You can't just pack it up and take it with you. I didn't play for many, many years because, like I said, I was sort of all over the place and I wasn't necessarily always around being around a piano. Later, though, particularly when I finally moved and kind of settled here in Chicago, I've been now almost 20 years here. I have my piano here, so I have the opportunity to be near it, to be able to be consistent, because what's one of the first things we have to learn, or that we have to like fold into the way we do things, is if you are not consistent with something that is complex, you're not going to progress. So after all those years away from piano, then sitting back down to play, two things were immediately clear. One, I remembered much. My brain had absorbed and, and held on to a lot of my music training. But number two, a long time away from that piano and my technique was garbage, it's just garbage. So whatever I knew, it was like, I don't know, a room full of gibbons pounding on the piano. So slowly over time, I started doing just, again, daily training, back to scales, back to arpeggios, back to the basics, back to getting the fingers working the way they're supposed to work. Back to reading music again consistently. So it came back over time, and I love the practice of it because it's just a little thing I do for myself. Now, how do I relate it to jiu-jitsu? Do I relate it to jiu-jitsu? Absolutely. As a matter of fact, the things that have been very helpful for me, which I try to incorporate from time to time, now that I'm actually teaching occasionally, are things like metronome training, because so much of fighting is timing.
Yeah.
Right. And what is really hard to understand when you're very first beginning is that timing, and I think I thought this as a beginner, that timing is something that you have to chase. It's something you have to find or something you have to catch. The truth is, or at least the truth that I have discovered doing this now for a while, is that you create timing. You create it. You make your opponent react to something which will make them step in a way, which will make them move in a way. And then you can take advantage of that, right? So the timing within inside of a fight is something that you are actually creating. Much like when you sit down to play any instrument, if the music tells you to play it fast or slow, that is presumably the songwriter or the composer, saying what they believe is the best way to play this piece of music. But it's up to you to do it. Like, it's up to you to do it. And if you can't play fast accurately, then it's gonna, then you need to play it slowly, and then it's gonna have a different sound. I don't know if it's better or worse, but it's definitely different. And it's not necessarily what was intended. So within the context of music, timing and tempo and all of these things, like one beat off can completely change the tenor and tone of a piece of music. You can miss a rest and it'll throw things off. And I find very much the same in fighting, that once you get into somebody else's, your opponent's rhythms and timing, then you can take advantage of that. So that's definitely one thing that I see for myself anyway, that aligns. And then the other piece is that, much like music training, becoming proficient at something as complex as a musical instrument, the kind of the approach that I take to training music is very similar to the approach I take to training jiu-jitsu, because it is such a big and vast sort of complex system. And that's about consistency. It's about practice. It's about recognizing that, if you are going to go spar, if you are going to be sparring, if you're going to be fighting, that you need to be training the things that you're going to use in those fights, in those positions, in those places, versus training maybe the latest, coolest, neatest thing. And this kind of brings us to the question of, are you a martial artist or are you a competitor fighter? And I think that's also something that everyone needs to kind of decide. But I think as an older athlete, it becomes really important. And what I mean by that is, I tend to think of myself as a martial artist. I do compete very occasionally. I do it mostly just to kind of test myself, pressure test what I've been learning. But I don't think of myself as a competitor. And I think being a competitor actually shrinks your game. Much like choosing to only learn, say, classical music or only be a jazz musician. That's 100% the way you should go if that is what you want to spend your time in, right? If you want to be a musician or let's say a musicologist, now you need to widen your area of inquiry, right? And as a martial artist, I get to do that. I get to play and allow myself to focus on all different kinds of things, which is much more enjoyable to me. So as a 54-year-old, I learned how to berimbolo, which is not a move that I ever needed to know how to do. It's not a move you would ever use in a self-defense situation. It's not a move that I'd probably be able to pull off in a competition, but it was fun and it was great. And it does add to my understanding of the art across the board, right? So to my mind, that's part of it. It's like how you train is very similar to how you get better at music. And then I think the timing piece is hugely important.
Well, for years, I wanted to do a video on metronome, just music as it relates to martial arts or fighting in general. I just never got around to it because, for the most part, it would be a major project, and
Yeah.
it would go over everybody's head unless you're a musician, but everything, what I try to tell certain people, like I could talk to you about this because you know music a lot. You have time, you have tempo,
Right.
and then you have the timing, which is different. And people sometimes get the two mixed up. So for example, if I'm throwing like this quarter notes, what if I throw in a dotted eighth note? Okay, so I'll do this and then double up or something. All of that relates to music. Arpeggios can relate to different techniques, high, low, high, middle, low, and shit. There's so much there that just correlates, but people don't know that. Nobody really trains like that. It may be something that I'll pass along to certain students if I continue to teach in the future that have a musical background. I think it would make it much easier for them to put their techniques together. But I was just interested in hearing your thoughts, because for me, while I played the drums while I was learning how to fight, I never took any lessons until I didn't start studying seriously music theory and lessons until I was done with my catch wrestling. So I was about 18 or 19. I forgot how old I was. And I started studying class with a classical accordionist in Cleveland. And while he was phenomenal, I mean, absolutely an amazing guy. I got technique ideas, but man, I'm a jazz guy. So it wasn't until I was 21 that I started studying jazz, Cleveland Institute, just Ronnie Moon, and just heavy jazz. I got really immersed in theory to the point where, that's what I wanted to become. I wanted to become an arranger,
Yeah.
even a performer, because my drums I was playing at a, pretty high level on the drums at that time. My accordion, this is 1985. It wouldn't have mattered if I was the greatest accordionist that ever lived. You're not getting to get a gig playing jazz accordion. You're lucky if you can get a job playing strolling in an Italian or French restaurant. So I did the accordion more for the love of it. So my problem is my memory is poor. So I've forgotten a lot of theory. It would take a long time for me to brush up, probably. I'm just not interested in it anymore. But back then, learning to improvise changed the way I fought, because now it was no longer going down this road, like A leads to B leads to C. It doesn't. The whole world is open. So I think that was the biggest thing that changed my way of fighting, and just life in general. It made me able, I was able to think quick, come up with problem solving, in even instances that aren't related to fighting. But no, it's just great. And
Well, it's very funny you bring up improvisation, because that was as someone who studied classical piano, there's not a lot of improv in classical. There's a lot of rule following and a lot of, interpretation for sure, but not improvisation. And when I very first started jujitsu, so Jason, as we all know, is a huge lover of music, of all different kinds of music. And when Jason and I first started working together, before I started fighting, he and we would just, of course, talk during our sessions, and he talks a lot about music. And his early days were all metal music, and I did not know much about metal. Not really my genre.
That's a good thing.
Huh?
That's a good thing.
So he took it upon himself to train me in metal music. So he would send me like, here, listen to this. And I told him, I said, absolutely, I will listen to everything you send me, as long as you listen to everything I send you. And he's like, okay. So I was sending him jazz music. I'm like, here it is. And, some jazz, as you well know, can be 6, 8, 10, 12 minutes long. But I'm like, these are key things in the world of jazz. Like, this is music you should be listening to. So we spent a couple of weeks trading back. I'm listening to Slayer and he's listening to Thelonious Monk, and we come back and that was a great education. I have to say, I walked away with a few songs and certainly musicians inside of the metal genre that I definitely admire. These are, I may not love listening to their music, but I can absolutely admire their craft, and they're very good. There's a lot of it that I could do without. But what I found interesting was when I started jujitsu, it is ABC. It is 1, 2, 3. It is do these things, because you have to begin somewhere, right? And then Jason was trying to guide me into the world where I would be able to actually spar or roll or do some kind of sort of positional. And I wasn't his first jiu-jitsu student, but I was one of his first. And I think it was a combination of he wasn't really sure how to get me there, because his upbringing was the Shark Tank. Like, you throw them in and you just, you know, the craziest will survive. And you can't do that to me. I'm old. And at one point he was trying to get me to improvise. And I had a little bit of a meltdown, and he laughed, and he's just like, I thought you liked jazz. I thought you could, you know, but boy, you can't improvise. And he was absolutely 100% right. And I went back and sort of to the drawing board, if you will, on my side of things. And I listened to a lot of jazz in the beginning part of my jiu-jitsu career, looking to find because I'd always appreciated and marveled at those who could do that, who could musically improvise. And I still struggle with musically improvising. I want to make sure I have my music and I know where I'm going. And but jazz really helped me, listening to jazz and listening to it in a way that was different from before, not just for enjoyment, but to truly listen to how musicians were playing with their music, helped me get to a point where I could actually start sparring, where I could actually start improvising with my fighting. And I could take A, B, C, D and turn it into D, A, C, A, you know? And I think you're right, Tony. I think if you have someone with even a bare minimum of like musical knowledge, it can be a very powerful framework around which you can teach this. Teach fighting.
Well, let me throw this at you too, or this is for everybody out there. So, you know, a lot of martial artists, grapplers included, tend to be really flashy. Some of them really like to show off and stuff. Musicians do that too. All genres. They'll play scales and, you know, just shit that sounds great, but musically it's junk. So, right after I had my aneurysm, I had my aneurysm in '93. That ended really any chance of me being any virtuoso thing. My hands don't work right. So a guy came over to visit me at my apartment. Phenomenal jazz musician. Last I heard, he moved to Vegas. Great piano player, great accordionist. His name was Don Elia. And Don is like, you know, instead of playing the whole keyboard, this is talking about improvising. He said, just go one octave, take one octave only and improvise within that octave. Okay. So I had my accordion teacher, Jerry Sigler, gave me a keyboard because, you know, I was paralyzed my right side, so I couldn't play the accordion, but I could, you know, get my hand and try to move my fingers on the keyboard or use my left hand. So Don showed me on just the most beautiful improvisations to songs, jazz songs, in one octave. That relates to fighting because now I don't have to go up and down the keyboard, all these flourishes, like you're fighting like a madman with all this stuff. Simple, baby. Make it frigging simple. So for those of you who aren't musicians, on a standard accordion, you're going to have 43 keys. On a piano, you're going to have 88 unless it's extended. And just like an accordion I have an accordion, it has an extended keyboard, 46 notes. One octave is actually 12 notes with the chromatic scale. So now you're taking a quarter in the accordion world, or in the piano world, if it's an extended keyboard, which would be 92 or 96 keys, you're taking 1/8 of the keyboard. That's it. So you're cutting that range down to this, and you can still produce phenomenal music. And that's how you have to sometimes look at it when you're fighting. Forget all these million techniques, all this fancy flashy stuff. Take a small range and improvise within that range. And that's how I try to fight, you know, just it's eye-opening, really. And that's like a reverse thing. I fought like that before Don Elia pointed it out. And so I'm like, oh my God, I fight like this one octave kind of thing many times. So my point is, in the beginning, I took jazz and related it to fighting. And then 20 years later, or whatever, 15 years later, it was, I took my fighting and I could relate it to jazz. So there's so much that you can grasp. And I'm sure, I'm not an artist like a painter or a drawer, but I'm sure there would probably be parallels with that. But the big thing for me was, the practice. I mean, because I trained so hard fighting, boxing and wrestling and everything. So when it came time to play music, it was so much easier. I mean, there was times when I was with Ronnie Moon, I practiced 9, 10, 11 hours a day. I had the time, I could do it because it was non-taxing physically and it was enjoyable. I mean, it wasn't in the beginning, but as soon as I started to get better, Ronnie's problem, or my problem, was Ronnie didn't have a problem. I did. He threw me in the deep end, man, like heavy block chords and just, very difficult stuff that, most seasoned players of 15, 20 years don't do. So I didn't have any breaks. And the problem is, when I got away from the music for health reasons or whatever, getting back to it for me was pretty much impossible. Whereas if I would have learned just to play simple notes, 3-note chords, maybe once in a while a 4-note chord, as opposed to blocks and big ass open harmony chords, tenths and shit, it would have been a lot easier for me to just pick it up again. So for people who don't know what I mean, the correlation would be, imagine, you're a 500-pound bench presser, and through years or accidents and everything, now you're only benching 150, 200 pounds. You're never going to get back to that 500 probably. And it's the same with me. I was up here. I'll never get there again, with certain elements of my playing. Some elements I was never up there, but yeah, but the thing is, for you, it's an inspiration because you don't quit. You're still going, you're still trying. I remember I used to get there to the gym on weekends to train Jason, and sometimes you'd be there and I'd catch the end of your lesson and so on. And you always gave it your all, and you always had a smile on your face. You were never really cranky or anything. And it's just nice. You had the right attitude. And I don't expect you to fail. You won't. You haven't. You can't. You've already succeeded. No matter what happens, you're there.
The very
great coach.
The very first time Jason said to me, and I was a no stripe, no belt, nobody. And he said something about, well, when you're a black belt, something or other. And I laughed because I thought that's ridiculous. And he looked at me dead serious. He's like, what are you laughing about? Like, there's no reason you can't. So he's great because he's always believed. So it's nice. I can lean on his belief when I'm struggling, right? Which sometimes you got to do. But yeah, it's been a hell of a journey, and I expect, my goal has always been to be on the mats when I'm 80. I don't know if that's going to happen. None of us do. I tease Jason that he's going to have to be, wheeling me up in a wheelchair and dumping me on there. But it's hard. It's a difficult, complex thing, much like music. And it challenges me in a way that nothing ever has before. And it's filled with really cool people. That's the fun. That's really a large part of it, right? It's the people I've been able to meet and get to know are people I would never have met in my life, ever. And that's just such a fascinating and fantastic part of this fight community. Because honestly, I haven't met that many jerks, to be honest. I haven't. I've met plenty of dangerous people, but I haven't really met a lot of assholes, which is kind of nice.
You're lucky because they're out there. There's plenty.
I know they are. But I think I think about Jason and you and the Joes and Junior, Carlson Gracie Jr. Junior's fantastic. And all of the black belts I've had the chance to meet, and very serious, very dangerous people. And they just got, they're not all my buddies, they're not all my best friends, but they all come to the art, I think, with the same general idea that they want to get better, but in so doing, they're going to bring people along. And that's what I'm now trying to do when I'm sort of here in the middle part at Purple Belt, where Jason's sort of given me a class. Like, that's part of that martial art thinking, which I miss actually from the music. My music is very personal and very internal, and I've never had thought to sort of give back. And that's one of the things I truly enjoy about this jiu-jitsu journey, is I'm finally at a point where, like, Joe's one of my students. It's kind of blows my mind. He could probably kill me, although he's really nice. But I do think I have at least some value, that I have some jiu-jitsu knowledge that, at least for now, can help Joe along, and everybody else. And that makes me feel great. That makes me feel like valued within the community. And that's a huge, huge part of this, at least for me.
Well, you're very valuable as a human being, regardless of your martial arts skill. And that to me is, see, in the music world, I've met some studs, musicians that were jerks, but the 98% of them, maybe more, were wonderful. The biggest jagoffs were the guys that just really weren't that talented, okay? And they're cutthroat, and they want the side gigs and they want this and that, but with music, it's like, put up or shut up. Martial arts isn't really that way, unless you're competing all the time. But in the gym, you're training. But on a job, when you're a jobbing musician, man, who's good and who's not good. And it's a whole different, how can I say it? When you're playing music, a lot of times I was the best musician in the group, right? So I had to hold back when I'm playing the drums. I can't be doing Buddy Rich solos and shit. It's not what it calls for. So you're just in it for the money many times. Okay, you're playing gigs at songs, music that you don't want to do. It's a job. But with martial arts, I see that there's I know that there's a lot of cutthroat. There's a lot of tribalism, like rivalries and so on. And I don't really see that in music. I don't see that kind of rivalry. Because musicians have some sort of limits. Like, for example, let's just say we're talking about heavy metal. Let's say you're a heavy metal guitarist and you get called to play a, jazz concert. Well, you're going to turn that down. I mean, I'm not a jazz guy. Call Joe Cardinal. He's a jazz guitarist. So you kind of got that. It's kind of cool. Not always, but for the most part. But I remember one time I had just moved to Chicago. We're talking 1987. So this would have, and I moved to Chicago in either September or October. So this was either around that time or it may have been the first of the year, 1988. And I'm sitting in on some South Side place. And there was this guy, I forgot his name. He's long gone. He was like almost 80 then. And he was bitching, talking shit about me while I'm playing. He's like, that kid from Cleveland, he's strictly jazz, you see, strictly jazz. That's how he would talk, like Edward G. Robinson or something. And I kind of laughed because I could play a good variety of music. I wasn't big on the Latin shit, but polkas, waltzes, country, rock. I played with members of the Cleveland Symphony Orchestra. I mean, I played quite a lot of variety, but here was a guy that I knew, okay, I'm never going to play with this guy and then not that day, but like a week, 2 weeks, whatever it was later, I heard him play and I'm like, oh my goodness, this guy was terrible, but but I don't like that in the martial art world. I just don't like people who kind of have that. And you see so much now, like on YouTube, guys who just really aren't qualified to teach the show and stuff, and of course they'll get these oohs and ahs from people that don't know any better, but just stay in your lane.
Right. So it's an interesting time that we are in. I, of course, don't have experience from other than watching Bruce Lee movies back in the day, but today, right now, with jiu-jitsu for sure, it's still new, frankly. and evolving quickly. And with YouTube, with this availability of so much free content, it's good and bad. It's good in that you can really truly find fantastic instructional type information on the internet to help you with your studies. The trick is, especially when you're in the beginning phase, is to separate that from all the crap that's out there, because there's an incredible amount of jujitsu crap, martial arts crap, self-defense. Some of the self-defense videos out there are laughable, but then I think, there are people out there who are watching this and thinking this is okay. And that actually scares me. Some of the stuff is like going to put you actually in a bad position.
Well, let me interject quickly, because to go on that, especially this is out there for the self-taught people. You might have a legitimate instructor out there, okay? He or she may be the best, but the material that they're showing is not suitable for you at this point in your journey, okay? So you're learning shot math, or that's the level you're at, and all of a sudden you're doing advanced calculus or some differential equations that are way over your head. So that you can't do either. So it's a combination of shitty, no good instructors and quality instructors, but you're not ready for them yet.
Right. I had a student come in and ask about a particular move, a beginning student, and I said, well, that's a thing, sure, and it can work. We train that, but we hadn't been training it at the time. And I asked them, why do you ask? And they had said, oh, I found this on YouTube. I had done a search for how do I, and then they picked the one that they thought looked the best. And then I'm like, yeah. So the trick here is that as a beginner, you see this and you're seeing it used successfully, because people don't post their failures on YouTube. So you're seeing this and you think this is going to always work. And I can tell you right now, here's the counter to this move. If you do this to me, this is what I'm going to do to you. And in a fight, there's always a counter to every counter. There's always something that can be done. This is why we train. And this is, why it gets harder the longer you do it. And I'm like, this isn't bad. This just isn't the answer. There isn't an answer, right? And I think especially beginning students want an answer. They want the solution for the problem. So they go to the internet and they're like, how to defend cross collar choke. And then they pick one of whatever comes up. And it may be right. It may not, it may absolutely be good technique and good details, but without understanding the cross collar itself, where it can come from, what else can come off of it, whether or not, the person throwing that cross collar choke on you might very well be baiting you into that move, right? So I always try and express to beginning students that they just need to slow down and not worry about that stuff.
Well, here's what happened to me. After my aneurysm, I started to get, coming out of it and everything. It took almost 2 years, but all right, I want to try to play again. I want to start studying again. I don't recall what year this was now, 96 maybe, who knows, 95. So I go back to Jerry Sigler, I go to his house, and he gives me a lesson for that week. The lesson was, bye-bye Blackbird, Kia F. Come back next week. Let me hear you play some really good jazz. Somewhere, I most of my stuff got stolen when my car got stolen, but this cassette tape exists somewhere in this house. I don't know where. But anyhow, so I show up next week. Now he's backing me up. He's playing the chords, and I'm da 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 da. So anyway, what I had done that week was what you're just talking about with these YouTube kids that just want to go see something fancy. I picked out, this is long before YouTube, but I had a cassette tape of Bobby Enriquez. Phenomenal. He passed away. Mind-blowing. They call him the Bruce Lee of the piano. He was a Filipino guy. Well, he did Bye Bye Blackbird, so I copped some of his solo, okay? I still remember it to this day. So we start, I'm playing the intro, and you're playing it, and then when it comes time to take the chorus, the solo, I do the Bobby Enriquez thing. Jerry's sitting on his couch, he's like, yeah, really good. and I'm having a great time. And then Jerry keeps going on. And I'm like, shit, I've run out of ideas. I got nothing else. I copied Bobby Enriquez. Now I'm fucked. Excuse my language. But now I'm screwed here. I don't have anything else to play.
Right.
So Jerry kind of ratted me out there. He knew that what I did was not improvisation. It was memorization, right? I memorized a small little lick. So that ties into the moral of your story. And this is what I try to tell people. Don't do everything by rote, because if the opponent goes slightly askew, throws something at you, you're going to be lost. Now what do? You have nothing, you have no foundation to grow from. So I'm probably the world's most, it's all with me, it's all foundation, fundamentals, more than a lot of instructors will just start showing you move after move after move just to keep you happy. That's, to me, not the way to do it. You got to get like you should know from music, you've got to play your scales, all 12 keys, arpeggios, all 12 keys, inversions, so on. You got to do everything and no shortcuts, unless all you want to do is just be a soloist where you're just playing your song and not jiving with everybody else. So yeah, I'll never forget that. Jerry inadvertently, I don't think he did it on purpose. He just inadvertently ratted me out by, let's keep going, Tony. Let's play some more. No, I ran out of gas. I don't have any more musical ideas. And it was weird because, like I said, I had that tape, and you can hear it. You can hear how I sounded like a serious jazzer, and then I sounded like a Schlachmeister, right? I mean, it was like this. So you can't do that in your fighting, because, as you mentioned, if you try to do this in a competition, you lose. If you try to do this in a street fight, you die. So don't put the cart before the horse. And I tell everybody, get the finest instructor or coach, whatever you want to call it, that you can. Stop the self-taught shit, because it's, in the end, it's not the way to do it.
I think that's fair. When you have chosen to learn to fight, whatever that is, whether that's striking, grappling, both, whether it's for self-defense or whether it's for fun, whether it's for a martial arts purpose or competition, you can learn a lot from the internet, yes, but you are out of your mind if you don't find a coach that you can trust and give your trust to them. If they're good, they will get anyone where they need to go, including an old, pain in the ass like myself. A good coach is absolutely invaluable. Like you just cannot, I agree 100%. You can't truly do this without one. And they're worth every penny. So, you find a way to put it in your life, and you invest in yourself, and you do that by finding the right coach for you and for what you're doing. It's so important. Yeah.
I've been lucky with that. Even in music, I've had, it's weird, fighting in music, I just had people placed in my life.
Yeah.
Ronnie Moon, well, okay, so my first accordion teacher was a guy named Ed Cecchine, who was well known in Chicago, in Cleveland, classical player. So I actually searched him out. But Ronnie Moon, I met pure luck. Jerry, I met through Ronnie. Again, this kind of luck. And then from there, it's just, luck. But yeah, I mean, Rodvan was at my church. It was luck. There was no catch wrestlers in the world back then that really were legitimate catch wrestlers. They were all phonies. So he happened to be in my church. How much luckier can you get?
Right.
So it was just pure luck for me. But there, in whatever style it is, boxing, it don't matter. Got to get quality instructors, because too many people want to reinvent the wheel, and they're going to waste their time trying to do things that it's already been established. This is how it's done. It'll save you a lot of time. It'll perhaps prevent injury, stagnation, and the worst thing that you can do is develop all these bad habits. So when you finally decide to get a world-class instructor, he or she has now got to spend a lot of time undoing your muscle memory, because what you have learned is not going to fly under fire. So that alone is, and the money is nothing because you can always get money, but you can't get your time back. That's the thing. You
Right.
spend 10 years on your own or 10 years with a shitty instructor. That's it. It's gone. You can't get those 10 years back. So that's always been my thing. Find the best. And in fighting and in music, I've been lucky. I've trained with the best. And fighting, okay, I think I did well. Music, I let my coaches down. I've said this many times. I let all my music instructors. I never reached my my ability that I think I probably could have. That's on me. It's no reflection on them. And that's another thing as a coach. The internet is, well, the world in general, but they're full of haters. And if you have a bad student, the coach sucks. It's just like grade school. Not everybody can get straight A's, right? You're going to have kids that fail. You're going to have kids that get A's. Why focus on the kids that fail as a reflection of the teacher? Look at the kids that got A's and B's. Sometimes it just boils down to the child doesn't, or the athlete doesn't have the aptitude for this, or doesn't want to put in the right effort. I get that a lot. People just, it's too hard. It's too hard.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it is hard, but if things weren't hard, we wouldn't have had penicillin. We wouldn't have put a man on the moon. We wouldn't have done all these things that are incredibly difficult in this world. Building a skyscraper, that's not easy. That's hard. So, it takes hard work, and it'll pay dividends in the end as long as you have, again, that foundation. Keep going over your fundamentals over and over. And even if you can't do it physically, do it mentally. Review. It'll keep you fresh. It just will. It's bottom line. Boom.
It'll keep you fresh. It'll keep you safe. Yeah, you have to train your fundamentals every day, honestly, whether it be music or fighting. And I think also, again, as someone who's not out there to be the best, who's walking down this path for very different reasons than a lot of fighters, just again, partly due to age. I think you need to be very certain of your why. Why are you doing it? You don't have to share that with anyone. It can be yours, like it doesn't matter, but you need to be very certain of your why, because life will get in the way. Your family, your kids, your job, your finances, whatever it is, life will get in the way of you trying to accomplish these things. The likelihood that someone at my stage of life is going to very quickly, reach a certain level of mastery is just incredibly low. I can't train 5 hours a day. I can't do these things. Even if I had the time and didn't have a full-time job, my body's not going to take that. I'm not 20, right? So I think you have to be very clear on the why, because when life throws something in front of you, it's up to you to make that next choice. I'm still going to do this. I'm going to find another way to do it. Like your story, Tony, about your aneurysm. Like, you didn't give up. You had to fight back from that. You could have said, oh, well, now I can't do that. And nobody around you in the world would have probably said anything like, yeah, you had this big health event. You're right. You can't do these things anymore. But you decided. And that's the thing. That's such an important part of life, I think, but certainly an important part of tackling a complex and difficult thing. You have to know the why, so that when it seems impossible, you can still find your way back to doing what you love.
Very well put. Yeah, I don't want to get into my story about the aneurysm thing. Maybe one day we will down here, but yeah, it was the proverbial fork in the road. And what do you do? Kevin saved my life. It's unfortunate that he got killed in the plane crash, but he really was I saw the ugliness of humanity back then, how like pretty much most of my friends, with not Jerry Sigler, of course, but Everybody else except for one kind of abandoned me because they didn't want to see me like that. It was too hard for them to see me all messed up like that. And then people at the health club, when I needed help, I needed assistance. Some health clubs refused to allow me in. And the one that did, nobody would help me. I mean, I needed help, like, I can't get the weights off the rack. I can't bench. I can't do any of this. I got one arm working here. And it wasn't until March of 1994, March 13th, I'll never forget it, when I met Kevin and he says, come down the next day, which was a Monday, and I did. And, he helped me every step of the way. But I would have I can't say it, but I would assume I would have given up if it wasn't for him, because I had exhausted my, for months, 8 months or whatever, because I had the aneurysm in June of 93. So this is now, and I was in the hospital for 3 months. So I got out in August. So from August to March, failure. Nobody's helping me and shit. So yeah, don't give up, people. Even if you're running up against a brick wall and you feel that there's no help, you got to keep reaching out. I'm doing that now. I'm going through the worst period of my life. I just reached out to Nico and Joe yesterday with an email. I reached out to the guys a month and a half ago with an email. Don't be afraid to ask for help. I need help. I'm in a position where I need people that are going to help. So far, nobody's stepped up. Joe's done his thing. He's doing the best he can, but maybe I just need to reach out to different people. I don't know yet. I don't know who to reach out to. We're going to have the agency here on Thursday. They were supposed to be the last Thursday regarding my mom. And
yeah,
believe it or not, the girl's car broke down at the drive-through on her lunch break, so they couldn't make it. So now it's this Thursday, 9 o'clock in the morning, hopefully.
Yeah.
And we'll see where that goes. But, it's going to get even, now we're in the home stretch for me. It's going to get so much more difficult. Yeah. It's going to be unfathomable. I don't even want to think about what I'm going to go through. So I'm trying to prepare now, as much as I can. So for anybody out there that is going through whatever your grievance is, whatever it is, you've got to stay strong, and please reach out for help, be it friends, family, acquaintances, professional, whatever, but try not to give up. I've said through the years, I think I talked about this here too. I've had people who I have no idea who they are. They've reached out to me via email. These were suicidal people, right? Or they seemed it, really down. And I can't turn my back on these people, right? I'll email them back or call them or whatever it is. And I don't know these guys, so because there's always seemed to be people that have been there for me through my childhood and early years, adolescent and young adults, up 30 years and stuff, 30 years old. So I'll be there for anybody that I can help, and hopefully somebody will be there, for me, coming up, like at this stage of my life. But Joe, what are your thoughts here? What questions do you have for Melody?
Well, gosh, there's been a lot of like really deep observations and I think really fundamental things. So I was kind of like, oh gosh, how do I follow that? I 100% agree with. Yeah, that's true. Well, you're welcome. That's all I can say about that. But yeah, I think very much your point about the why is very important, especially because similar to like Tony's observation that a lot of times this training is hard. I mean, it can be fun for some people, but for a lot of us, it's going there to get kind of beat on a little bit. And so always having that mantra in your head of, I'm doing this for such and such a reason. These are my reasons why. I think keeping that, some people don't need that. Like I said, some people just eat it up. They go there and they're like, yeah, someone's choking me out. I love this. Or I'm being punched in the face. This is awesome. But the rest of us, it's like, you have to remind yourself. I mean, I should say we're fortunate enough. Like, I think, Tony, your situation, it was in your face every day while you were doing it. If you weren't training, you were risking your life.
Right.
But for the rest of us, some of us, it's, that's, well, and sometimes we get lulled into a sense of false security with that. And in some ways that's dangerous because occasionally there'll be a rude reminder. Like I said, I live the suburban life now, but I have run into situations just out of the blue whether it's on the metro when I'm commuting or just on a random street corner. I mean, I think I'm going to paraphrase you earlier, but the assholes are out there, and they just randomly show up. And to me, that's the very fundamental reason why we do this. I mean, I think it's great that you do it for your health. You can make a great community of people. I mean, there's a lot of ancillary benefits to it, but ultimately it's a human need. It's not even just a human need, but a life form need to be able to protect yourself. Life is dangerous. And we're fortunate enough that we live in a country, a lot of us, and live in neighborhoods where it's not in our face all the time. Not everybody. There's people, like I said, there's a lot of areas, even in this fair city of ours, where it is in their face every day. But yeah, keep that in mind that, to me, it's just like, I talked earlier in some of the other podcasts about like knowing CPR, knowing some basic safety things. Hopefully you'll never have to need that, but boom, sometimes it just, life puts it in your way. And so I think keeping that when things are going tough, when training's tough, to remember why you're doing this, that situation could be out there for you. So, I mean, that's kind of riffing on what you guys were talking about and some of the reasoning there. But definitely remember that can be a thing.
To jump on her thing, she was a classical pianist. Well, generally regarded, Vladimir Horowitz was considered probably the greatest, right? Well, you're not going to probably be as good as Vladimir Horowitz, but nobody else is either, right? Same with the jazz world. Art Tatum, Oscar Peterson,
Right.
Bill Evans. You're not going to be as good as them more than likely, but it doesn't matter. Just like fighting, I see guys fighting, professional fighters. There's guys out there better than that. It doesn't matter. There's better, there's worse. What do you care? Just get better. You can always bring something to the table. Hell, I've listened to guys play music that by no means did they have the technique of Oscar Peterson, but shit, they played good ideas. They had, great stuff. Just like there's fighters that just aren't going to be the strongest man or the fastest man in the world, but they got great skills, so there's nothing stopping you except you, that's just all there is to it. It all boils down to us. The only thing that we have complete 100% control over is our mind. If we're healthy, we have our mind, and everything stems from there. So if you can control this thing, the sky's the limit. So but don't expect too much out of yourself, out of your instructor. Take everything, in your stride, and you'll make gains, man. You'll be great.
I totally agree. You have to, this stuff is really, really difficult. But if we focus on that aspect, we'll immediately trip ourselves up. Whether you're going through a difficult time in your life, whether you're trying to tackle something difficult like fighting or music, it's one thing to set aside some time to sort of philosophically consider those things. I think that's something I do because that's the way I think. But on the day-to-day, when you're in there and you're doing it, we call it the grind. I don't love that word because it feels too, I don't know. It feels too monotonous to me. I think you should be able to find joy in the things that you are doing, which includes your fundamentals, which includes your life lessons. Joe's right. Everyone should know CPR. I think I'm right. Everyone should know how to fall. I think you're right. Everybody should know how to live in the world as the best that they possibly can, being the best that they can be. And fighting is one of those things that will get you there. It will protect you. It will give you confidence you never thought you could have, no matter how much confidence you have in other things. Being physically able to fight is a kind of confidence builder that I've never come across before in my life. And I've got plenty of confidence and ego in other areas of my life. But being able to stand up for someone else on the red line, this happened to me all the time. Before fighting, there's like, I'm calling 911. Now I might still do that, but I feel confident in the situation. I don't feel like I have to jam out right away. I feel better about being able to assess the situation. So, there's a lot that comes from all of this. And I'm grateful that I can still do it, because I'm finally getting to that point where I get to play. Like, I get to play. Now the songs are mine. Like, my jujitsu slowly but surely is becoming mine. Because in the beginning is Jason's. Jason gave me his game. He's like, here. And I did with it what I could, but shockingly, I'm not Jason. But I did what I could with it, and I've now been able to study long enough that I'm starting to play my own music, if you will, and that's joyful. That's a joyful thing. At the same time, there's all this other stuff that comes, these benefits that come, confidence, physical confidence, knowing I can push myself harder, knowing I can go harder, knowing that I, can make a difference is important. And knowing that I am resilient. That's the other thing fighting will absolutely teach you, because there's nothing quite as horrible as being on the bottom side of a 240-pound wrestler. Even down there, even knowing I'm getting my ass kicked, I know I'm not dying, and I know what I need to do to get through. And that's a lesson that we could all use, because sometimes you just have to get through it.
You do. And you're a rare exception. Really, you are. And I don't mean this to blow smoke up your butt, but you are. You have your head is on right. You're with the right people. You got a good core there. In essence, I'll call it a support group, even though I'm not saying you need support, but you know what I mean. You got that circle there. Many people don't have that. And that can be hard. Like, I'm in that position right now because being isolated here where I'm at. So for other people that are out there, if you feel like you're getting burned out, or just you're going it alone, just reach out. Even if you don't know me, send me an email. If you just want to chat, you don't have to buy anything from me. Just send me an email. I'll chat with you. No big deal. So yeah, you got to keep that. You got to keep recharging your batteries. Right now, for me, I'm in a holding pattern. We'll see what happens this coming week. But 2022, and we'll probably discuss this on next week's podcast, there's going to be great changes. And some people may not like that, but, regarding the Tri-C, just training in general, and just me, there's going to be some big changes in 2022, and they're going to be permanent changes. Sometimes you have to do that. But you have the right mindset. And I'm sure if you hit the wall, really, you'll figure a way to get around that. I know you enough. You're not going to quit and come too far.
You're right. Oh God, I can't imagine at this point. I've definitely had those thoughts. I've asked myself, is it worth it? But then I talk to Jason, then I talk to my family, then I reach out. Like you say, if you need to reach out, you reach out. If you need help, if you need just to bounce your frustrations and doubts off of somebody, there are people out there who will listen to you. So don't ever give up, for sure. And that's because I promise you, in 6+ years I've been doing this, I have definitely considered walking away, but I always come back to the path. It's always far more interesting on the path. It's always far more interesting.
Well, there's been musicians who have walked away, from their musical careers for whatever personal reason, right? Not even health related. Some of them, that's it. They never come back. Others do come back, right? Many times with a vengeance.
Mm-hmm.
Pat Martino, one of the greatest guitarists that ever lived, he had an aneurysm or a stroke. He lost the ability to play completely. He had to start from square one, okay, and learn how to play again. And he reached his previous level, if not surpassed it. On the other hand, the great Hank Garland, he was a country, well known in the country music world, played with Patty Page, Elvis Presley, and so on. But he loved jazz, and he was a world-class jazz guitarist. They made a movie about him, as a matter of fact. He was involved in an auto accident And that ended his career. Okay. He tried to make a comeback. He physically couldn't. Physically, he could not. But as long as that doesn't happen, you could still immerse yourself in that world. I mean, Garland was a legend. He was, put on pedestals, and so stay in it. God forbid something would happen. Your instructor would probably still let you or anybody else out there show up at the gym, even if you can't do anything, just to watch, just to be there, right?
Yeah.
And at least absorb it up here mentally. But yeah, and to the others out there who have gone through just exasperating circumstances, I do want to say this. There is no shame in quitting either. Okay. We all have to know when it's time to hang it up, but just make sure that the tank was completely empty, that there was nothing hidden in the reserve, but please don't ever think, well, I got to do it because I'm a loser if I quit. No, you're not a loser. Okay. There are times when it's the right time to give up. You just have to know when. And that can be a struggle for some people. And that may take either counseling or really getting with people that know you like a book. And if they can discuss it without their ego being involved, if they could really discuss it for your benefit, they may say, you know what, you're right. All that time, now it's time to give up, but take all that energy that you had, all that enthusiasm, and channel it into something else now. That's how I have to look at things, and I'm not saying that I'm right, but that's the way it worked for me. And sometimes this will really throw you out, but sometimes you got to channel it into stepping away from everything. And if you have the financial wherewithal, blowing off a year and just having a good time, just go out and eat, drink, whatever it is that you like to do, travel, whatever, just learn to enjoy yourself so you can, get invigorated again. So I'm sure that once the dust settles with me, I'm going to take a good chunk of time just to enjoy my life. It's been put on hold for years, and I need that to, I can't have that anymore. So, and I know that I'm not alone. There's other people that are out there that have gone through maybe a death, a wife, a child, a spouse, a husband. Grieve, get it out of your system, reflect, and reconstruct your life, figure out something else, but do whatever you have to do without guilt.
Yes, 100%. Truth is, I started jujitsu almost exactly around the same time my mother was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. So the very foundational, that beginning year was also the same year that my mother started dying. And they are forever entwined. I can't pull them apart. So jujitsu ended up being the thing for me that helped me carve out sanity in that home life that was so crazy. So you never really know what it might be. But whatever it is, like you said, Tony, like if you are uncertain of what you need for your next step, then reach out, talk to professionals, talk to friends, talk to family. Just keep doing things till you find the thing. Maybe it is time away completely. Maybe it is travel and joy, and that's fantastic. Absolutely, you do that. Maybe you've been so consumed with something that you need something else. That's, for me, I needed something that was difficult, that while doing it, I literally couldn't think of the other things, right? So everybody needs to find their own stuff. Life, it's trite, but life is short, and it's hard. Life is hard. So where and when you can have fun, and where and when you can have joy, you should absolutely do that. Because life expects a lot of us. And I think those of us with personal integrity just try our best to provide and to do the things we should do, that we feel we ought to do, but we can't lose sight of ourselves. This goes back to the why, whatever it is, whatever your why is. Why are you studying music? Why are you helping your friends? Why are you doing whatever it is? Why are you pursuing your year off? Just keeping that intention clear in your mind, I think will help. Because the journey that I keep talking about, like my jujitsu journey, is just a part of my life's journey. I'm
Well,
grateful.
Joe was going through some hard times for a while. He had a little bit of money saved up. He reached out to me. I said, Joe, you need to do what makes you happy. And I told him, go out, spend some money on different kind of mirrors, okay? And put these mirrors up and just look at yourself all day long, because that gives Joe the best joy to Joe, is to look at his reflection in the mirror. And he bought, I don't know what, 10, 12 different mirrors of all different kinds. And, he would pose and do his thing. And I think that picked him out of his doldrums. Don't you think, Joe?
Well, see, I think you're mistaken there a little bit, because it's kind of like when you're on any kind of a journey, there's a level where you kind of transcend, and you don't need the reminders. You don't need the mirrors to know that how you look, like when Fonzie checked himself in the mirror, it was redundant. He knew his hair was good. For those of you who are old enough to know who the Fonz is.
You remember the Fonz?
Yeah.
I get it. So you've transcended ordinary physical pulchritude. You're basically, what you're saying is you're a living Greek god.
Basically, I mean, I don't want to overstate it, but
Oh, you're not Greek.
But I mean, I think that's something about, at a certain point, in the journey, and we have many journeys, I think, to Melody's point. So, and that's something for everybody else to shoot for at some point, where they know, before they know that they're going to be good at that, whether it's playing music, whether before they pick up that instrument, or whether they get on the mat, they've got that confidence where now they know no matter what's coming their way, they don't need to check the mirror. They don't need to ask those internal questions. Am I ready for this? Much like I am, before I see the mirror. So, but
well,
yeah.
Kevin, all kidding aside, Kevin used to say, he used to say, I don't want to be the best. I just want to hang around the best. And that can be another avenue, like for Melody, who may say, well, I'll never be as good as Jason or this guy or that guy. You don't have to be. You're around that world. You're around world-class people. I was never going to be the world's greatest musician, but for a time in my life, I hung around the guys who were, so kind of made me feel good. And it took me away, and I never felt, let's be honest here. I never felt like intimidated, like, oh, I'll never be as good as him. I knew that, but I said it with pride. It's like, wow, I'll never be as good as, like Don Stilley, yet I'm here listening to Don. How good is it? How good does it get? Yeah, it's just a way of looking at things. And it's not a game. It's not like playing this bullshit positive thinking fake shit. This is real. This is how I felt. I know I'll never be as good as Jerry Sigler. I don't have the ability, and I'm not going to put in the effort. But at least I got to study with him. I picked his brain, and same with you or anybody else. You may not be as good as your instructor ever. Maybe you will, but at least you're there. And that instructor, he or she took the time to care about you and welcome you into their world. How good does that get? I mean, that's just awesome. And I won't be able to ever see any of my instructors again, because they all passed away except for one, really. But I still have their memory living on, and I can throw their name into conversations now and then, and people are like, oh, really? Tell me more. This sounds interesting. So I can't demonstrate what they did musically, but I can try to explain it.
Right.
And I can kind of show it in a slow way. But so there's just always things that you can do to, you just don't put too much expectation on yourself. But if you're a young kid, there's nothing stopping you from wanting to be the best in the world. Do it. Try it. Give it your best shot while you can, because athletically, we have a small window. We really, really do. Now you're seeing athletes competing longer and longer. A lot of that is drug related. Let's be honest. You want to try, naturally, you have a smaller, shorter window to be, world class, and your skills will descend. No problem with that. So give it the best shot you can. And for those older people who are just starting out, you could probably literally get in the best shape of your life. Like you, Melody, you said you never were an athlete. You're probably stronger, faster, better athletically now than you were when you were 20 years old, you know?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. You may not recover as quickly because that's like you touched on that. But boy, yeah, I tell people when they want to train with me, give me your background and I'll look at it and I'll say, I think that I can get you in the best shape of your life. And that's just not verbiage. That's for real. Now, if they were an Olympic gold medalist, 2 times over, well, you're not going to get probably in better shape than then, but I can get you in as great a shape as you can for your given age, or I can teach you a skill set that you can excel at for your given age. So that's what we all have to shoot for. That's same with Joe. I mean, Joe did start training with me about 20 years ago, gave it up because of personal, family, but he got back into it about 4 or 5 years ago, 5 years ago probably. And, he was already in his 40s, but he makes great progress and his mind is there. He's, I would have no problem sending somebody, coaching, giving them tips. Matter of fact, we got to get back to working out, we'll see what happens. But anyway, it's getting to that time where we're going to pretty much have to wrap it up here. But I want to take a moment to thank Melody. From the first time I met Melody at Jason's gym in Andersonville, Cheetah Gym. I'm going to throw that out there because Cheetah Gym was always nice to me. The people there.
They were.
Yes, and it was a very quality gym. Matter of fact, I never was even up on the top floor. There was 3 floors, basement, first floor, top floor.
Yep.
So anybody who's around Foster and Clark or whatever, just check that place out too if you want to lift weights. There's no martial arts. Maybe there is. I don't know. But you want to go to, if you're in Anderson, you want to go to Jason.
Yeah, for martial arts. Yeah, Bender Martial Arts and Fitness.
Absolutely.
But Cheetah Gym's a great gym in the Andersonville area too.
Yeah, I have nothing but good things to say about the people there. But anyway, I met Melody there. Didn't know who she was. She was very, Jason introduced me to her after the lesson, or maybe right when I walked in, but then afterwards we talked briefly. And then when I found out she was a musician and she traveled the world and, all of this stuff. And she said, you're a very interesting lady, very, very interesting. And, we always made plans for all of us to go out and get something to eat, which hasn't come to fruition, but we got to work on that next year.
Yep.
It would be an honor. But she's happy. I mean, I'm a better person for having somebody like her in my life. I don't reach out to you too often, Melody, because I can't reciprocate because of what I'm going through. I don't want it to be one-sided. But who knows? I may reach out just to say, hey, I need somebody to talk to today.
Sure.
But we'll see what happens. But right now, I really want to say thanks for having you on the show. And Joe, I'll let you take the closing curtain call here.
Sure. Well, last thing I know, Melody, you're heading to a competition, right? You've got some students that are competing. So
that's right. I have cancer out today. Yep.
Cool. So best of luck. I'm sure everybody's going to do great and have a great time. So
thank you. Yeah, it should be a good time for sure.
So looking forward to that. And yeah, thanks again for coming. This was a great talk. It went on for quite a while and I thought a lot of good stuff, but I mean, in a good way, not in a bad way, like it normally is with Tony. No, thanks again for getting up early and making the time for us. And we definitely have to have you back. So
if you're Fonzie, what am I, Potsy?
I just want to say this, going back to that, I don't want to live in a post-Fonzie world. God, what have we come to where the world doesn't know who the Fonz is?
I don't know. Well, guys, thank you for having me on. Tony, it's so good to just see you. I kind of keep tabs on you because I get to see Joe every once in a while, which is nice. But thanks so much for having me on your podcast. I appreciate it. And next year I'll be looking for you in real life.
Keep your schedule open. We'll probably have you on again if you want to. That would be great, And I hope to see you next year on a regular basis. Okay.
That sounds good.
All right, everybody. We'll see you guys next week. Thank you, Joe. Miss you, Nico. Hurry back, Nico.
Bye.
Bye, all.